ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Good morning, this is Arlene.
Hi, this is Gowri.
And you're listening to us, of course, at our daily, the ASEAN Daily.
That's right. And this is during ASEAN as well, the voice of discovery and sharing, where we are going to bring everyone news from all over Southeast Asia.
But we first put our news shout out to Myanmar first. And talking about Myanmar, as you all know, the protests of the Myanmar students against the government for the education law has been ongoing for quite some time. In fact, Myanmar students and activists, a lot of them are being charged or being caught by the authorities for the protest clashes.
And what's even worse is their Prime Minister Thein Sein actually defended the police action, saying that it was not wrong for the police to actually arrest them, and it would have been worse in other countries. And he's saying that what they are doing is actually quite moderate in that sense, because in any other country they would have just been shot down by the police.
How do you compare yourself with the worst of the worst? You should compare yourself with countries that are actually implementing democracy and going towards the kind of direction you want to go. So I really do not understand the logic of Tencent. And in fact, I think what the students are doing are really, really progressive, in a sense that they really want to change the new generation of Myanmar. And of course, the way to change is to make sure that the education system in Myanmar is being created in a way that they can think critically and information can spread easily, and they are able to to be groomed into leaders for Myanmar.
And as much as the march was technically illegal, as they did not have the official approval, but they still had some negotiations with the officials, and it seems like they were allowed to continue in Yangon, which was of course not allowed at first, and they had to fight for it, but they managed to make their way to Yangon, but that turned out to backfire them instead, and the authorities are accusing them of not following the orders, and that they actually promised one thing but did another thing. And of course, when it comes to this whole protest, the whole idea of it, like you mentioned, is about the education in the country, and they were not happy with the new education bill that was about to be passed, and which is why they held the entire demonstration in the first place, to voice out their discontent and to protest against it. And it's their rights as students, and if President Thein Sein really want to compare them with countries in the West, apparently, where they are more violent, he should also know that in the West they would probably be more open to discussions about education law with the youth in the country.
I guess they wanted to do it on their own term when it comes to how the national education law should be discussed. This is for the Tencent's government. But to me, I think what he's doing is totally putting Myanmar 10 steps backwards, when they already done so much in terms of liberalizing the economy, getting in investors and developers, and now suddenly they are just stopping at the crossroad for their political liberalization.
And that also says a lot about their current laws and their legal systems. Like you were saying, as much as they are more open economically now to other countries, trying to attract investors, but it seems they have a lot of internal problems that they have still yet to solve, as much as we are all hopeful that Myanmar is heading towards democracy and they're doing away with all their outdated archaic laws. But it seems that with what happened here, they are making us skeptical again on whether or not Myanmar can actually reach there and be a progressive country that is open to dialogues instead of arresting the students and putting them behind bars.
Totally spot on. And talking about education, of course, you can't help but to focus on language education. And do you think English proficiency is important?
Of course, it's important. I think it's very, very important.
And someone else shared the same view as you, and this is MP Kamala Nathan. He calls on students to be proactive in improving English proficiency. He's not just an MP, but he's also the Deputy Education Minister for Malaysia.
And what his concern here is that Malaysians are not very proactive when it comes to our English proficiency. Most students just tend to sit in class, wait for the English teacher to come in, probably open the textbook and follow the syllabus. But that's really not how you learn a language. It's all about speaking it and practicing, and it doesn't just come from an hour.
But the way the government is seeing it is also different. Apparently, under the Shift 2 of the Malaysia Education Blueprint 2013 to 2025, students' progress in English literacy will be consistently monitored with the extended literacy and numeracy screening program. Not sure what does that mean. And at the same time, English teacher will be upskilled to meet international standards. But how can you upskill the quality of the current English language teachers? I'm not sure.
That's right. And also when it comes to what you were saying about monitoring the students' performance, they tend to set their bar very low. Like I think even here he said that the students have to get at least a credit in SPM. But that's, if you really want English proficiency, you cannot say you just get a credit. He has to maybe insist for an A minus or an A itself, because if you don't start raising the bar, people will not push themselves. Then how are they going to be proactive?
But you know what I'm against is the whole exam-oriented perspective in addressing language problem. Because to me, the best way to learn a language is when you are being placed in an environment where everyone speaks that language. In fact, I can attest to you, I learned the most when it comes to English slang and English language in general by watching probably almost 12 hours a day of televisions.
Exactly, and that would actually be more efficient, I think, instead of just sitting in the class and opening your textbook. I mean, of course, it's important to lay out the foundation and to learn your basic grammar and all, but after all, it's just about speaking it. And even in Malaysia, we always have this constant battle on whether or not English is going to take over Malay as like the most widely spoken language, and the government always have that fear in them. So until we solve this little what would I call inhibitions that the government have against the English language, we are never really going to be proficient. And it's even shocking actually the level of English proficiency among our young graduates in the country, or even students in high school who can barely construct a sentence.
I will use the grace method if I were to have kids and I want my kids to learn English.
The what?
Is to feed them with Disney movies.
That could work as well, because as much as they keep hearing it, it registers in their minds as well, and that makes it easier for them to pick up the language.
But how will you address language?
Well, instead of having an English-speaking week in school once a month, I would think that they should do it every single day. And of course, that doesn't mean you let go of Malay as the...
But a lot of Malaysian students are shy,
And
so even
also with low self-esteem as well.
So when you have, either English week or whatever you call it, you will often have the same face going to the stage or doing the same thing rather than converting the unconverted.
And another thing about speaking English among Malaysians is also when we normally speak the Malaysian English with a lot of grammatical errors and all, and there's nobody to correct us, and we just think that, hey, it doesn't matter, people understand me, so what do I care?
Tell me about it. Google Translate.
So that's another thing. Like you were also asking about how are they going to upskill the teachers. That's another very important point as well, because there are many instances where the teachers themselves don't speak good English in the first place, because they are very textbook oriented, and because of that they're not even that proficient. And when you are not proficient in the first place, how are you going to impart that knowledge or that skills to the students in your class?
So in reality, because of the textbook exam-oriented sort of education system we have, even the teachers are suffering from the lack of good grasp of vocabulary, I suppose. But, enough about English, enough about student. Just a bit of an update about Joko Widodo. President Jokowi is actually arriving in Beijing right now, or already arrived, for 3 days visit. In fact, what we are seeing right now, that this is probably his first time for his visit to China. The president and his entourage arrived at the airport very late evening yesterday. Several officers, including Indonesia ambassador to China's Sugeng Raharjo and Chinese Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister Liu Zhenming, greeted the Indonesian head of state upon his arrival.
And of course, during the course of the meeting, he will be, as always, when two leaders of the country meet, they'll be signing a lot of treaties, having a lot of dialogues. But of course, the most important, the key issue that they'll probably discuss is about the South China Sea, the maritime dispute that's going on between China, Vietnam, and Philippines, where Indonesia actually offered to be the neutral moderator in this case.
So what we are seeing right now for Indonesia is Jokowi is definitely expanding his international relations presence, and in fact visiting China is part of his second leg of his tour for 3 ASEAN nations, which include Japan and Malaysia. I think Malaysia would be later on during the ASEAN summit, which we hope we can have a glimpse of him.
Yes, and also probably hear his insights about some of the issues that we will be asking him. And when it comes to Jokowi meeting with the leaders of China, will they actually be open to receiving him and his ideas about what he has to say about the maritime dispute in
it's
the
pretty
region?
hard, because when he expressed that view, he was in Japan. So it kind of makes sense since Japan also have some maritime dispute with China on another sea. I think the eastern side of the sea, China Sea. But with China alone, I think China is pretty soft on Indonesia compared to other Southeast Asian nations, partly because Indonesia has always been a friend to China, has never been a foe, and they actually have nothing in common in terms of dispute. But in previous times, most of the trade has always been focusing on other countries rather than China. So this will be a great opportunity for China to expand its market there. And I don't think they see Indonesia as a threat. That's definitely for sure. And it's more than just about geopolitical discourse with China when it comes to Jokowi, by looking at who he had brought in together with his entourage. Besides his wife, he also brought coordinating minister for economic affairs, foreign affairs minister, trade minister, state enterprises minister, cabinet secretary, and chief of the National Defense Forces, and investment coordinating board. So if you look at it, he brought in people from the foreign affairs, from the defense forces. It shows that he really wanna talk about the South China Sea, frankly, with China. But at the same time, he also brought in trade minister, economic affairs, blah blah blah, and it shows that he really want to develop Indonesia's economy. Especially, he brought in state enterprises, meaning that he really want to focus on the SMEs as well.
That's right. And also, I think we reported before that he's also looking to increase investments in the country, and that was something that he stressed a lot when he was in Japan as well, trying to sort of please the investors and looking for ways to attract them to the country. And it could probably be the same thing with China, for it to work both ways, not only for China to China's potential to bring in more Indonesians to invest, but also for the Chinese to go over to Indonesia. So it's a reciprocal thing.
And from Indonesia, we are going to take a short break.
Okay.
When we return, we will talk about ASEAN economic community, especially focusing from the Philippines side. Of course, in terms of oil, of course, another news in terms of oil prices, and countries in Cambodia and Laos, how they are developing economically.
ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hi, this is Arlene.
Hi, this is Gowri.
And of course, you are back with us again. So, Gowri,
Yes.
the Philippines are getting ready on ASEAN. Why the Philippines only? Where is Malaysia?
I'm not surprised, especially since we went to Manila and we saw how people there, especially
well
the young
prepared.
kids, they can actually ask very critical questions about the AEC and about the ASEAN integration, even at policy level to like the ministers that were present.
And they were so outspoken. I was surprised. I could imagine how the same kind of situation would be in Malaysia, which is silence.
Silence or probably
Scratching heads.
what's that?
Scratching their heads.
Scratching their heads and not having enough confidence to voice out what their concerns are, or even to who are the right people to ask about the AEC and the ASEAN integration. And it seems like, of course, Philippines is one step ahead of the rest of us. But another country that is the most ready is actually Singapore.
Ooh, Singapore.
And of course, Singapore doesn't come as much of a surprise as well, given their economic standing of how strong they are. Although they are actually the smallest in the region, and they are well known for not having that much of natural resources and all, but they still manage to get to where they are right now, and all the other countries are somewhat behind them. Although they,
But it's not just the awareness that these countries are ready, Philippines and Singapore. It's also about the barriers that they are able to live, the agreements that they are able to sign. For Singapore, especially Singapore, I think they have always been practicing economic liberalization, so it's pretty easy for them to ease markets and to attract more foreign investment as well as foreign workers, skilled foreign workers, by the way. But in other countries, that would be not the case. The next one, surprisingly, I never been to Brunei, but apparently Brunei is ready.
Brunei is ready, huh?
Super ready.
Well, we don't hear much about Brunei as well, except for their controversial hudud law, which we are also infamous for now in the region. But yeah, speaking of Brunei, with what happened, we always thought that, they took a few steps back, especially in terms of being a moderate country that is open. But in this case, Brunei being in just behind Singapore is also, for me, would be a bit of a surprise, because when we talk about bilateral trades, it's always Cambodia and Japan, or it's probably Laos and another country, Myanmar another country, but we rarely hear about Brunei actually coming out with new trade agreements or
But you'll be surprised that Brunei lately, especially since a couple of years ago, not a couple of years, just 1 or 2 years ago, they have started focusing on trade, on even environmental issues, improving access to resources, especially human resources. So you can see how Brunei is moving forward. I mean, in terms of law-wise, I cannot comment on that, Sharia law. But in terms of its society, I think Brunei realized that they cannot depend on oil forever. So this by having greater intra-trade, it will somehow spur more entrepreneurship and more more economic progress, especially focusing on the business side on it. And besides that, is Thailand and Malaysia. I'm not surprised. Thailand and Malaysia.
I'm
Especially Malaysia.
surprised that Thailand and Malaysia are on the same level, actually. That's right. I mean, I would assume that Malaysia would be a few steps ahead of Thailand at least.
Malaysia and Singapore, or Malaysia and Philippines.
And especially because we are the chairman of ASEAN this year, and we should be the ones spearheading the whole effort.
But I can understand Thailand, because politically it has definitely moved back, 100 steps. Can you imagine, for so long Myanmar has been a backward country ruled by a military regime, and now it's transiting towards democracy, but Thailand is doing the opposite. So
where they are actually going towards the
I
military.
don't know whether it's a curse or what.
Well, it also goes back to their whole culture. We know that they've had a ton of military coup in the past, and also when it comes to General Prayut Chan-o-cha, should I say, the Prime Minister of Thailand, he is also pretty hard-headed on being in charge of Thailand and saying
the
that
word general. Yeah.
okay, to make him happy. So yeah, he seems pretty hard-headed on actually being in charge of the country, although people may want otherwise, but he thinks that he's going to do a good job, and he keeps coming up with all these new policies, new laws, and people are just going to have to get used to it, and there's no questioning.
But one thing that he has done a good job is to actually pen the song called Happiness.
I actually thought you were going to mention the free World Cup screening. Because that's what will make me happy if you want to get people to like you. And going back to that, he's making all these efforts to get people to like him, but ultimately he has to face the harsh reality where they want to go back to democracy. They want to be on par with the other countries that are doing well in Southeast Asia as well, and that will be very hard to achieve.
It's not easy to achieve. In fact, the rest of the countries, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, and Myanmar, these are really, really poor countries that they still need a lot of development, investment, and all these other policy to strengthen their institutions. So I'm not surprised it will take them quite a longer time to get ready for ASEAN. But one thing that I think the AEC will benefit Southeast Asia is to increase the intra-trade among Southeast Asian nations. In fact, they have this idea called Think by ASEAN and Proudly Made by ASEAN, and I have no opposition to that. In fact, I would love to have wearing a T-shirt or buying a product and then it's stated there made in ASEAN.
Or it could be like one of those New York T-shirts, I love ASEAN with the heart shape.
Gowri are so cheesy.
And well, another person who will be very happy about this is of course Professor Leonard Theories, because he's always also telling us about how we should start marketing things in terms of ASEAN and not just made in Malaysia or made in Indonesia or call it regional. We have to start using the whole ASEAN brand itself when we are putting ourselves on the map, because that's another way how people get more aware and also a way to strengthen the whole integration process.
That's true. And who's Leonard again?
He is in
your
charge.
Friend.
He is our friend, but he's also, of course, the professor from Penang who's very passionate about Southeast Asian issues.
Another thing I want to highlight is about the lower oil price and inflation opportunity for economic reform in developing Laos. Actually, the oil price have definitely boost a few economies in Southeast Asia, because a lot of the countries are not oil dependent except for Brunei and Malaysia. So for countries that are not dependent on oil, they actually can use the surplus of not spending money on the oil prices to benefit other forms of investment. And in fact, with lower oil price, meaning that more investment can come in and do business in Laos.
And that also means that they can actually start cutting down on their subsidies as well, like I think it recently happened in Malaysia and Indonesia also infamously cut off all their oil subsidies.
And Indonesia.
And this is something that maybe Laos can take heat from and also start implementing that. Because as much as we talk about like just now we were just mentioning about how Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam and Myanmar are slowly lagging behind, it seems that they do actually have a steady economic growth, but it's on a very, very slow pace. And for them to actually get up there and compete with all the other countries in ASEAN will of course take some time, but this is probably the right time, according to the ADB senior country specialist for Laos, where he said this is probably the best time for them to step up and start making these changes if they want to be on par with other countries.
That's true. And another thing that I'm actually quite impressed is how this would actually spur the growth of ASEAN economic community. So we have to thank the lower oil price in a way. And besides Laos is Cambodia. So Cambodia economy is expected to grow, but also it needs to diversify. So according to ASEAN Development Bank, Cambodia is set to prosper over the next several years because of a stronger global economy, lower labor costs than other countries in the region, and increasing amount of foreign investment and a fall in oil prices. I actually see this as a positive thing, except for the word lower labor costs. I think wages has been in stagnation for quite some time, and this is not a good thing.
And that's something that they have been facing for a very, very long time as well. Even a couple of weeks ago, we were reporting about how their foreign workers, especially even the local Cambodians, where they were really paid very, very minimum wages that was not even enough to cover their essential needs. And of course, like you were saying, it is a very positive in other aspects when we talk about stronger global economy and also increasing the amount of foreign investment. And it seems that textile industry is actually the one that is really driving the Cambodia's economy at the moment, which is why they
are not called sweatshop for nothing, right?
Exactly.
Southeast Asian sweatshop.
Yeah, you're spot on. And also they are trying to diversify and move more towards agricultural products, tourism, infrastructure. And despite this overall positive tone, it seems that what the ADB representative also said is that if they could only branch out to more industries and try to diversify more, they could actually be on the right road, on the right track to get into the AEC.
I hope that they would. I think on the bigger picture here, if, either it's for Laos or for Cambodia, they should take the opportunity to increase the growth of their economy, but at the same time, I think they should look beyond just GDP, but to increase wages for the normal layman, because at the end of the day, if you have a prosperous economy but not a prosperous society, is better than not having any economy at all, right?
That's right. I'm glad you brought up society as well, because human rights is another aspect that's really, really suffering in Cambodia at the moment, where
and Laos
and Laos as well. And even when it comes to their civil societies, they do not have a strong voice, a substantial voice where they can actually voice it out and get the necessary answer for the people. So apart from all these economic reforms, it's also very, very important for them to look at the society, like what you mentioned.
So we'll take one short break, then we will give a brief news
About
commentary.
What's happening in Malaysia this time.
Yeah, it's a lot of things happening.
ASEAN Dailies. First and the foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hi, this is Arlene.
Hi, this is Gowri.
And we are back again. So Gowri, I'm so glad for you because Penang has its first mayor.
Yay! It's
woman.
a huge step for Penang as well, especially since we got back our city status after waiting since last year, I think,
How
for
can it
it
not
to
be
be
a
approved.
city? I don't understand.
Well, there was this local government act, I think, that was passed many years ago, and that kind of stripped us of our
You don't have
city.
enough population, or you just don't have enough skyscrapers? I don't understand.
Well, what's important is we got it back, and another interesting thing that I would like to note here is also about the MPPP, which has been known as MPPP for since I was born, or
What
even
is
longer
MPPP?
than that.
You have to explain
It's
to our
the
audience.
Majlis Perbandaran Pulau Pinang, which is of course our city council.
Or the Penang Municipal Council.
Yes. But now it's been changed to Penang Island City Council, so it will actually be MBPP.
Oh, it's just the island. What about your other strip of land?
Yeah,
on
we
the
don't
main
really care
island?
about that.
Thank you, Gowri. Thanks to your Ling Guan Eng, is it?
Yes, that's right. And also, what's
I'm being sarcastic.
yeah, I know. Of course, thanks to Lim Guan Eng. He's quite notorious in Penang as well. As much as he's popular, there are actually a lot of people who are still against him and thinks that he's not really doing a good job with Penang at the moment.
So you're not a happy voter?
I'm actually the people who are happy, the one on the other side. Partly because I'm not there, so I wouldn't really...
You mean Seberang Perai, people living there?
Yes, yes. And also on the island itself, where there are certain communities that feel like, hey, he's not really doing as much as the previous government did. But, of course, the opinion varies according to
But I think
who
getting
you
the
ask.
facts right is more important, because opinions are opinions.
Yeah.
Can be biased. So
And it's also very, like you said, it's not based on facts, and it's just based on observation or just small talks at the coffee shop, you know.
But I don't like the new word of using the word island. What about Seberang Perai, that strip of land, you know, on the mainland? They are people too. They are Penangites too.
Oh, they probably have a different municipal council over there for their own.
And what's the name, Gowri? Wait, you don't care?
It could be that, or it could be MB. Usually, Seberang Perai they call it SP as well, so it could be MBSP. We'll look into that.
Well, we'll look into that definitely. I just want to give like a brief mention of what is happening in Malaysia right now. So the hudud law has gone into the parliament, but for the parliamentarians, apparently, parliaments not towards the hudud law may unlikely happen because of the constitution, in a way that the constitution ensure that all the law is equal among all citizens of Malaysia. So having hudud law, especially on criminal acts, having hudud law is really against our very own foundation of constitution.
And this is something that we've been talking about as well, on whether or not hudud is constitutional. And all this while, we got a very different picture about hudud. It seemed like everyone was okay with it. Like we were just saying just now, that was the idea, the opinion. But when it came to the facts itself, it seems that there are more people who are actually against the hudud, all the MPs themselves, as opposed to those who are for.
But I think the discourse on hudud should not be about whether you're for or against in terms of your personal opinion, but it should be whether it's in line with our constitution or not, because at the end of the day, the constitution is the very foundation law for everyone, that governs everyone, or even principle you call it. The next news that is happening in Malaysia, of course, Najib tabled the anti-terror law yesterday, and people have been waiting for this, and I'm glad that he actually tabled this, because terrorism, especially by groups like ISIS, has been on a rampant in Southeast Asia, especially among Malays. So having an anti-terror law would benefit Malaysia a lot.
But it seems that this terrorism law, they were not too clear. I mean, of course, we assume that it's about the ISIS threat that we're facing, but they're not too clear when they defined what terrorism was. And it could also sort of be like the new Sedition Act, even, that could be used.
But in reality, Gowri, even on a UN level, the word terrorism hasn't have a definitive definition as well. So I think what Malaysian government can do is to refine the definition based on our local context. That's all I can think of.
Yes, and to prevent, of course, like our Prime Minister mentioned here, prevention is always better than cure. But we also want to make sure that if he promises that it's for terrorists, he reserves it for terrorists alone and not for citizens in the country because of some tweets maybe that's being posted.
So don't tweet about ISIS, but tweet about ISIS Malaysia, which is a think tank.
Sure.
That's all from us today.
And don't forget to subscribe to our Facebook, Twitter. We also have Instagram, and also a YouTube channel where we upload all our daily podcasts.
And of course, you can always listen to us live at durianasian.com or via your smartphone by downloading the TuneIn app and search for Durian ASEAN. That's all from me, Arlene.
And this is Gowri.
Bye.